Greetings, friends, wherever you are, coast to coast or border to border. My name is George Gordon, and I'm speaking to you live and direct from Boise, Idaho, right out here in what we call judicial Siberia. I'm speaking to you here in this introductory tape for the purpose of introducing you to something that we think is pretty exciting. It's new, and it's something that the patriotic movement coast to coast is needed, and that's the courtroom strategy and procedure. How do you go into a courtroom? How do you win? How does the citizen get his day in court and come out the victor? Whether you're talking about taxes or traffic tickets and parking tickets or possession of this or that or something else, all of us are faced every day with the same old rigmarole from government. More and more taxes, more and more fines, more and more, more and more. And what's turned out now from the land of the free and the home of the brave, we now have the land of the timid, where we go to our government and we ask and plead and wheedle and whine. And so, some years ago, when I was running a business here in Boise, Idaho, my government came down on me, and they decided that they wanted more and more, and the golden goose just didn't have any more eggs. And so now I tell people that I used to run a company that produced $1 million a year, employed 30 to 40 people, and paid $200,000 a year in taxes. Today, I employ no one, produce nothing, pay no taxes, and I'm having a great time doing it. And I'm teaching other people all over the United States how to do that. And that's what this series of tapes is all about. We've put together a course of instruction in 30 lessons on videotape. And the purpose of it is to teach the average ordinary housewife, whether you're in Michigan or Kansas, or whether you're in the big cities of New York or Los Angeles, or whether you're a workman, a factory worker, a doctor, a dentist, a lawyer, whoever you may be, whatever walk of life that you're in, to go into the courtroom and get redress of grievance, and to stop paying taxes, to stop paying traffic tickets, to throw your driver's license away, throw the license plates off your car away, and to carry a gun if you want to. Now, I know that sounds a little bold and brash at the very beginning, but my record speaks for itself, and in the state of Idaho, I've argued 33 criminal cases successfully, and I've got 33 wins and no losses. And I've been going into the courtrooms for about 5 years, and I'm just doing it for fun. We don't do it for profit, because there is no profit in the Constitution or in law or in freedom. Profit in law comes from divorce, and it comes from ambulance chasing, and it comes from corporate law. And so there's been a big lapse in the knowledge in the judicial scene, or on the judicial scene, I should say, of constitutional law and rights that began with Marbury versus Madison and comes down to our present day, where our Supreme Court is giving us decisions like the Almeida Sanchez case, where a guy is hauling marijuana and he's not licensed, and the Supreme Court says turn him loose. And Miranda versus Arizona, where the Supreme Court says that where rights secured by the Constitution are involved, there can be no rulemaking or legislation that would abrogate them. And here in Boise, we have a school called Orson's Inn of Barristry. And we're teaching people here, just like you, wherever you are, to go in the courtroom and win. And sitting next to me right now is a fellow named Bob Hallstrom, who's a graduate and now an instructor here at the school. And Bob has been in the courtroom in the last year about 8 times, and his record sits at 8 wins and no losses. How did you get started at this, Bob?
Well, it was the same old rigmarole, George. My government just didn't like me. I woke up one morning and got this letter from my government and says, come on down, we want to take a look at your tax return, Toby. And Toby got up and went right down to the Internal Revenue Service to see what they wanted. When he got there, he didn't like what they wanted. And right away, I figured out that I was going to have to do something else, because I didn't want to answer all these people's questions. Not that my tax return was incorrect or anything. That wasn't the point. The point was I'd been a good slave for 20 years, and I'd been filing my tax returns in good faith, and I'd been putting all those numbers on there just like I was supposed to. And now these people are questioning my integrity, and I didn't like that. And so I ignored them for a while and sent them some letters, and then I ran across this strange creature named George Gordon. George taught me what he knew, and we proceeded from there. And since then, I've been in the court about 8 or 10 times, and I don't really have a good count, and everything from instructing delaying an officer to running stop signs and carrying concealed weapons. And gosh, my government can't put me in jail yet, and I don't think they're ever going to do that. So as a result of that, I got involved, and here we are, and I'm teaching people just how to be good citizens and free men. I guess that's how I got here, George.
Well, Bob, you sound like a real criminal. How is it that your government continually harasses you? Are you doing something bad, wicked, terrible, and awful?
Well, I guess that depends on your point of view. My government doesn't like it when you don't have driver's license and you don't register cars and you carry concealed weapons, and when you ask an officer a question and things like that, and you won't give him your name. And my goodness, if you don't give your name to a person anymore, an officer of the law, that is, you're under arrest for obstructing and delaying.
I seem to have that problem. And over here on our right is Neelis Cook. Neelis, what seemed to be your problem with the government?
Well, for some years I was just another ignorant slave just like everybody else, but at one point in time I met up with a guy who did have some knowledge of the Constitution and the laws of this country, and he believed that a man should be able to carry a gun just for practice and just to have a basic self-defense ability. And so I started carrying a gun, and in ignorance I had no idea the state of the law in Idaho, what it was all about. So after about 6 months of this, one day I was walking into a grocery store, and an officer of the law stopped me and said, "Why are you carrying that gun?" Well, events proceeded from there, and I ended up thrown in jail with a charge of carrying a concealed weapon on. We went to a jury trial. I didn't understand why it was that an officer was so afraid of seeing a citizen with a gun, and why it was that a man carrying a gun was a threat to anybody's life, liberty, or property, and therefore against the law. So we went to court. We had a jury trial. I didn't know a habeas corpus from a corpus delicti at the time. Knew nothing about procedure. I don't think I filed one motion in that original case. But I impeached the officer's testimony. It was basically a one-on-one issue, and won. And it made some waves in the city prosecutor's office, I must admit. That was about 5 years ago, and since then I've done much reading, much study on the law. But I have to admit that if it hadn't been for getting to know George Gordon and knowing what he has learned about the courtroom procedure, we wouldn't be where we are today. I wouldn't be able to go into court on these various traffic ticket issues and all the other issues that we get involved in and that you'll hear about in these tapes. You must know the procedure, and this is what we've tried to learn here and tried to apply. And so it's been years of studying. We had a group here in Boise about 5 years ago called the Idaho Patriots. I was one of the founders of that group. And we spent a lot of time dealing with tax matters mainly. That was, of course, everybody's hot button to start with. And after years of this kind of thing, we determined that we were losing consistently, stalling off the bosses, surely, but losing in the long run. So this courtroom procedure has been the key to being able to go into court and argue our defenses and to put up the kind of fight that the people up there in the bureaucracies can't handle. That's what it takes. You got to be able to put up a fight in the court, and that's where it needs to be decided anyway. So hopefully our courses here that we've devised do teach this.
Well, let me ask you a question here. Have you ever been into a tax audit, Neelis?
Yeah, several times.
And in the tax audit, how did you handle it? What's your modus operandi in a tax hearing? Let's say that at the very beginning you get a letter from the IRS and it says you haven't filed your taxes for 1980. What do you do next? How do you handle that sort of thing?
Well, I determined when I got a notice last fall, I hadn't heard from the IRS for many years, and I hadn't been filing for many years. And of course, I think everybody has to file, or else you wouldn't even be living on this earth. You wouldn't have any sustenance at all. So I determined that I would go in and meet them face to face and sit down and hear what kind of evidence they had against me and what kind of claims they had that made them determine I should be filing a return. And I wanted to see what books and records were and what requirements were that I had against me under the law. So with the determination to go in there and just meet them face to face, we discovered a new phenomenon. We discovered that a man can show them how the tax doesn't apply to him, how he doesn't have income pursuant to the Supreme Court rulings on that issue, and that they have no rebuttal. They literally can't hold up their end of the case.
Income? What do you mean you don't have any income? How do you buy groceries?
That's their position, that anything that you receive is taxable income. Well, they don't seem to understand that property is an inalienable right of the citizen. They actually held forth the view to me that they could tax rights. They could tax property, and it was a direct tax.
Are you telling me that you've got a right to your labor?
Am I a slave?
Oh, I don't know.
We haven't told the Toby story yet. have we?
Well, no.
Well, gosh, no, we haven't told the Toby story. Bob, why don't you start off with what we've discovered here about the plantation of Idaho?
Well, we think that there's about 50 plantations running around in the United States, and one of them's right here in Idaho, and I'm sure you've got just as good a plantation out there where you're at. This story started with a movie called Roots, and about a man who's running around Africa, and he's just having a gay time. Gosh, he runs through the jungles and Kuna Kinte, and he shoots animals, and gosh, he just has a real great time. He's a free man, and nobody's bothering him, and until one day he runs into a couple of these white men, and guess what? They just scoff him right up and throw him in chains and throw him on a boat and haul him across to this new wonderful land called the United States of America. And gosh, they sell him into a master, and the master takes him home, takes the chains off of him, and the first thing old Toby, he wants to run away. Gosh, he just doesn't understand this confined environment. And so the master has to chase him down. He got tired of chasing him down after a while. He says, Toby, you've been a bad slave, and you don't seem to understand the rules, so I guess I'm going to have to cut your foot off a little bit, and that'll slow you down. So master cut his foot off a little bit, and now Toby's got a problem getting around. So old Toby, he's beginning to understand here that, by gosh, if I don't do what I'm told, I get hurt real bad, and the master beats me and cuts my feet off and that sort of thing. Just really got a problem. So Toby thought, well, maybe I better just settle down and do things like I'm told here. So Toby decides, well, I'll do that. I'll just be a little bit better slave here. I don't really like my status, but I guess I'm just going to have to live with it. I can't get back to Africa. So he starts becoming a good slave, and then one day, the master comes up to Toby and he says, Toby, you've been such a good slave. Let me tell you what I'm going to do for you. Why don't you take a look out there in the field? See all those women over there? Now, the ones over here are single, Toby. They're all my women. And I want you to have one of those, Toby. You just go out there and pick one. Let me know which one it is and bring her to me so that I'll know what you're going to hitch up with. You got that? Oh, yes, master. Yeah, I understand that. Okay. Go get you one of those girls. Okay. So away Toby goes, and Toby goes out there, picks him one of these nice, fine women out there, and he brings her back to the master, and he says, Master, I got me a nice young lady here. I'd like to have her. Well, Toby, she looks nice. You sure nobody else has got a claim on her now, Toby? Yeah, that's right, master. Nobody's got a claim on her. Okay, Toby. Well, this arrangement here mutual. Everybody agree to that? I think it's all right. You've got my permission, Toby. How about you, lady? Yeah, it's fine. Okay, that's what you want, right, Toby? Okay. Now, Toby, you got to understand a few things now. I'm going to let you get married to this thing and let you live together and that sort of thing. I'm going to put you over here in a separate house now so that you can have a little privacy and that sort of thing. But you still belong to me. That's my woman, and you're my man. And you still work for me and do exactly what I tell you. You understand, Toby? Oh, yes, I understand. Okay, Toby. Go on about your business then. So Toby goes over and takes up residence. Then one day, a little lady appears a little showing in the front here. She's getting a little big.
Hey, Bob.
Oh, excuse me.
Is this the marriage license?
Well, yeah, you could call it the marriage license, I guess.
You mean the state, the master, grants permission to the slaves to marry? Is that what you're saying?
Well, doesn't the master always grant permission to his slaves to do things?
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that point.
Yes, certainly. So then she's showing a little bit and got a little pouch out here in front, and so master noticed that and called Toby over and said, Toby, I want to talk to you. You see a woman over there has got a little belly showing. Yeah, that's right, master. Well, that means she's going to produce more property for me. Isn't that correct, Toby? Yeah, I guess that's right. Okay, Toby, when that child is born, I want you to bring it to me so that I can mark it, so that we can keep track of my property, because that's going to produce for me in the future, and I don't want it to get away from me and have somebody else lay a claim to my property. You understand? Oh, yes, sir. I understand. Okay. So the lady delivers, and she comes one day to the master with Toby and got the baby in her hands, and the master says, gosh, that's a fine-looking piece of property you got there, Toby, and looks like it's real healthy and everything. Let me get a hold of its foot here and get this mark down here. Gosh, yeah, okay. There you go, guys.
We're talking about birth certificates, Bob?
Well, I don't know what you're talking about, but I'm talking about putting a mark on a piece of paper.
You mean a heel print on a piece of paper?
Yeah, heel print on a piece of paper. I mean, how else am I going to identify my property? I mean, that's my property, and I've got to
Is this some
identify.
kind of birth certificate?
I guess you could call it a birth certificate, but it's just how I identify my people. I mean, I can't have these people running around and they go over to John's plantation and get mixed up over there. I can't have that. I got to know who my people are.
Yes,
I got to keep track of them. Okay. See how it works?
I think I understand.
Okay. Well, that works pretty good now. Finally, Toby's being so good out there and he's picking cotton, but he does have problems getting around, so I'm going to give him something different to do. And Master calls Toby in one day and says, Toby, you've been such a good slave, and we'll let you drive the wagon. Now, Roscoe over here drives a wagon right now, but he's getting pretty old, and he can't pick up those heavy sacks down at the grain yard and this sort of thing. So I'm going to send you along and let you learn how to do that. You understand that? Would you like that? Okay, fine. You like that. You go with Roscoe for a few days, and we'll see how that works. And so Toby jumps on the wagons, and he learns how to hitch the horses and that sort of thing. And off to town he goes with Roscoe, and they drive down there and load up the wagon. And haul the stuff back and load it, put it in the barn or wherever it goes. And everything's going all right. About a week or so later, the master calls Toby and Roscoe and says, "Roscoe, how's Toby doing?" "Well, he's doing fine, master." "You think he can drive that wagon by himself now?" "Yeah, I think he can do that." "Well, you think I ought to chance and let him go?" "Well, sure, go ahead, master. I think he's all right." "Okay, well, we'll let Toby do it all by himself." So Toby heads into town with the wagon. Gets to feeling proud, right? I mean, he's got a new toy here now, and he's not being supervised, and he isn't watching what's happening. Guess what he does?
He doesn't yield the right of way, and he whips the horses furiously, and he speeds.
Heaven forbid. And he ran over a little child.
Uh-oh.
Broke its leg.
Oh boy.
Well, he's responsible for that because he was driving the wagon. Now, isn't that right, Neelis?
Well, I don't know. Let's see now. The master sent Toby to town to pick up the goods, and he's driving the master's wagon, and he's master's slave, so I think he's the agent of the master, and therefore the master's responsible.
Yeah, I think that's the way it works.
You mean the master then is responsible for the actions of the slave? Is that the conclusion that we're arriving at?
Well, here's what happened. Toby went on into town, picked up the goods, and got him on board, but he took the child into the doctor to have it fixed. Of course, Toby doesn't have any money, he doesn't have any property. He's property himself of the master, so he couldn't pay for it. What's he going to do? He doesn't have anything. Because all he has is what the master lets him have. So he puts the child, like I say, at the doctor, and then the doctor takes care of it, and the doctor bills the master. Yeah, that's how that works. And by the time Toby gets home with his wagon train of goods, the master already knows what's going on.
Oh boy.
And is he upset? What's he going to do to Toby? Well, he takes Toby out behind the house and gives him a few lashes and said, "Toby didn't seem to understand how to drive that wagon. I thought you were capable and competent. Since you weren't, I'm going to have to punish you a little bit. So here it comes. I'm going to give you 40 lashes with a wet noodle."
Don't whip the horses.
Yeah, don't whip the horses, and don't speed, and don't make those bad turns, and don't run over kids.
Oh, sounds like you got some kind of traffic code there.
Well, yeah, the real problem is here that John, my neighbor over here, has got the same problem. He's letting his slaves run around the wagons, too, and we've got to keep track of these people, and they're running over each other, and they're causing damages and loss, and I had to pay for the kids and leg and this sort of thing, and my horses are getting beat out, and can't have that. So I got together with John, and what we did is we hired a guy to put on a horse out there and give him a badge and a pistol and said, "I want you to watch these guys, and for beating their horses and, yielding at the wrong time or doing whatever it is they're not supposed to out there in the road, I want you to stop them. Stop that. I can't have that out there because I don't want to pay these damages."
Is that called a traffic cop?
Gosh, I guess you could call it a traffic cop.
I see.
Or a state policeman, or maybe even a sheriff. I don't know, but we just put that
You
guy
gotta
out there.
regulate that traffic.
You bet. You've got to do something out there. We just can't have all those damages, because if we got damages and we got claims, and if we got claims, and we got to pay out money.
Well, it looks like we need insurance now.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Why don't we insure that slave? And
Wait a minute. Why should we insure our slaves? Why not make our slaves insure themselves?
Well, certainly, let them pay the premiums. There's no reason for us, the masters, to pay the premiums for the slaves running around down the road.
Gosh, that would get us out of the liability and put the liability on them, and we'll just force them to have that insurance. We won't let them drive the wagon.
mandatory insurance.
I think that's
Yeah, I think
excellent.
that's a heck of an idea. Let's have mandatory insurance laws.
I think that's great.
How are we going to get those passed?
Well, now, let me see. Don't the slaves have some kind of plantation council that they meet in, and we determine what kind of rules they're going to live under here?
Yeah, I think that's called the plantation legislature.
Yeah, Parliament in England.
Oh, I see.
Guys,
So what we'll do is we'll go over to the plantation legislature and we'll just lobby over there because we've got plenty of money. And we'll see if we can't get some kind of traffic laws enforced and passed, or let's first of all get them passed, so that we can regulate the slaves that are operating up and down on our roads. We'll license them, I think, would probably be the best thing for us to do.
yeah, Toby was a good example. He didn't learn in a week, and it probably takes 2 or 3 weeks for a person to learn or something like that. And we can make a written test and this type of thing and make sure that they're capable and competent up there. And that's a privilege to them anyhow, because they don't own anything.
How are we
Everything
going
they
to
do.
determine whether or not that guy out there driving the wagon's got insurance?
I think he should keep a certificate right there in the wagon. And when the constable stops him, the first thing he'll ask for is the registration, certificate of insurance, and the license of the operator.
Yeah, he's got to have the master's permission first. He probably ought to ask for that driver's license before he goes any further, because we don't want our slaves out there, or those magistrates, or not magistrates, but marshals out there stopping you and me. So we want those people to have driver's licenses, though. He's got to ask that question.
Let's put a tag on the back of their wagon that shows what plantation they belong to. We got a number on it now.
Oh, a plantation registration, sure, and we'll have different colors on each one of these license plates. And that'll identify the slave and the plantation and the number of the vehicle. And that way, if it's ever stolen, the insurance company will know right where to get it.
Well, wait a minute. I don't think it does any good for that, but we can charge them for those tags and tax them on that and create revenue in which to enforce our other policies. We'll make them put that tag there. I think, if I was going to steal one of those vehicles, I wouldn't put the tag on. I'd take that tag off and get rid of it, put a different one on there. But what a revenue gaining thing that would be,
Gosh, we can pass a taxing law for these licenses also.
That way we won't have to pay for those traffic costs.
That's
We
right.
Just have them paid for by all those registration taxes.
Sure.
Certainly.
Excellent. Not only that, we could probably...
That's a self-supporting system.
Yeah, we could probably even charge penalties for these violations running around out there. I mean, they've got the contract and everything, and it's just a matter of executing the contract.
I mean, instead of whipping them or putting them in the stocks, what we'll do is we'll fine them money damages.
Certainly.
And that way we can make profit off of it.
Yeah, we can split the profits.
All right?
Well, then we can go out and fix check holes in the road and put in gutters and culverts and really fix the plantation up
Well,
nice
that's a
with
heck
all
of a
that
scam.
revenue. Yeah.
Sure, we can have a real nice plantation.
Sounds great.
And we'll have the slaves paying for all of it out of their own meager wages.
Yeah, that's how you do that.
Okay. Well, now, we have a plantation. We have a driver's license. Now, is this license some kind of a contract?
Well, I don't think it is because the man was a slave to start with, wasn't he? And so having that license, that's just kind of a regulation that Masters kind of put on him.
Well,
That he's got to have it.
I think what we really want is his evidence of consent to be regulated. And we'll make him get that, and that'll be that evidence that he is under those regulations.
Well, if he doesn't follow the rules, he won't get the license. We'll just suspend it.
Yeah.
He won't be able to drive the wagon unless he follows the rules. Let's say if he gets 3 tickets in a 6-month period, we'll just suspend his license.
Yeah, that's a heck of a good idea.
And then if he gets caught driving without a license, what do we do with him?
Oh, well,
We'll have to punish him for driving without a license, because he's dangerous. We don't want him out there like
We'll
that.
put him in jail.
Sure.
Well, I see. So these then are distinguishable from inalienable rights, and these are privileges that these serfs, who are now feudal serfs on this plantation, they have no property rights, they own nothing, they're not responsible for their actions, so therefore they have no common law protections under the Constitution, and we'll just take them through administrative processes, and we'll fine them, and we'll make profit off of them, and we'll have the Constitution for ourselves, and that'll protect our inalienable rights.
Yeah, that's right. And our rights remain intact, and we still have them. They're since our property. They don't have any of that. And we can do this. We can carry this right on down to the stores now. Toby wanted to open a store over there and sell corn that he was raising on that acre I gave him to, and I thought I could do that, and I could rent him a piece of land over there, and then we could charge him a license and go and inspect him and do things like that, and we can get some more revenue off of that.
Oh, I see. And now once you've licensed this fellow in business, then we can control and regulate his business outside the common law and outside the Constitution, and it'll just be an administrative process pursuant to contract.
Yeah, that's
Is
right.
that what you're saying?
Yeah, we've got to make sure that he's got a place in there for people to go to the bathroom and stuff like that, and got to have proper sewage disposal. And we just
I think we better get the governor to appoint a commission to look into this and apply certain rules, and then we can have the legislature apply these rules to these licensed businesses.
Yeah, we just haven't passed a bunch of laws. That's no problem. I don't think we've got enough money that we can handle that type of a deal.
Then we better have some inspectors go out and inspect these businesses.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, make sure they're up to snuff, and if they aren't, we'll have to fine them, and maybe even suspend their license if they're not going to follow these rules.
Yeah, we could probably shut them right down if we got the right laws through the legislatures.
How are we going to pay for this multitude of officers that we're going to send forth into the land to eat out their substance?
Well,
Don't
we'll
we
charge
need some kind of a taxing scheme?
Well, yeah, we'll just charge them for the license.
Okay, license fees. Now let's see. Should we have a sales tax on the products they're selling?
Well, yeah, either that or business
Yeah.
tax, or both.
And shall we charge them for the land?
Well, certainly.
I mean, after all, these people can't own land, can they?
No, but we'll let them think they can own it. We'll let them use it as long as they pay their pittance to us.
So what we'll do is we'll use...
Whatever the man owns is an asset to him. It's a business asset, and therefore it's taxable.
Certainly. We really,
Land, buildings.
yeah, we'll retain the right in possession of the property, but we'll make him perform on that by up front. We'll charge him $10,000 or $20,000 for the plot. Then that'll be a one-time charge, and he pays for that over time. We can get interest off of it. Then once that's done, we'll make him perform specifically every year in the form of a tax. We'll call it a property tax. That's a good scam. Then he'll
property tax.
Yeah, then he'll just keep performing on that contract forever and ever, as long as he owns the land. Or if he sells it to somebody else, I guess we ought to allow that, as long as that contract continues.
Let me see now. I think I see a big problem coming. Let's say that now we've been supposing here that Massa owns the plantation and he's got all these rules and these administrators running around and everything's going fine. But let's say the Massa dies one day and his heirs are off in some foreign country and they send him a letter. Send this son of his a letter and say your dad just died and left you the plantation, so why don't you come home? So here's son, and he's driving home in his automobile, and he comes around the corner and he sees the plantation, and he drives in the gate, and all of a sudden, traffic cop grabs him. Says, where's your license, registration, and proof of insurance, slave?
Wait a minute. I'm one of the free men. I'm not a slave.
I'm the master now.
And I don't have a driver's license.
Wait a minute. You're driving on this road. You've got to have a license, registration, proof of insurance.
But I have a right to drive on this road. This road is a right-of-way, and I don't need a driver's license. And I don't need a registration. What do you mean insurance? Why would I want to insure my property? Who told you I wasn't responsible for my actions?
I think we've got a big problem here. How's he going to prove that he's the owner of this property and that he's the sovereign over this plantation, and that he's the one that put that traffic cop in operation out there and gave him his job?
Does that
How's he going to prove his status?
Gosh, it sounds like we're going back here to the preamble to our Constitution. Are you saying then, Neelis, that we, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America? Is this the sovereign people putting down the contract to regulate this plantation and the roads and the use of them, and to establish freedom and to establish inalienable rights? Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, I think we better get a document to protect ourselves.
Well, let's go over here in Article 6, where it says this Constitution is the supreme law of the land. Now, that means that these traffic cops and all this legislation that's been going on can't overcome this Constitution. Now, the basic nature of this Constitution is that the people formed it and laid out the rules that their government was going to live under, and the government can't turn around now and make new rules that abridge those fundamental principles. And I think that's well laid out in the law.
Doesn't the government have rights, Niels?
No, it only has powers.
Oh, government has no rights, only powers.
Well, don't our rights come from the government?
No, Mr. Gordon.
Oh, wait a minute.
Don't come from government.
You mean to tell me that I don't have rights emitting from my legislature? Don't they give me the right to vote? And don't they give me the right to use my roads? And don't they license me? And don't they register my car? And then I can use my car on the road?
Didn't you hear him say that government has no rights? They only have powers, and the powers were given to them by the people. If the government has no rights, how can they give you what they don't have their capacity for themselves?
Government is a body of enumerated powers granted specifically by the people in written constitutions, and therefore it can only do the job that it was told to do. You tell Toby to go out to the field to pick cotton, you don't want to see him over there pruning the grapevines, do you?
Especially when he's cutting off the fresh fruit.
That's not his job, and you don't want to see him over there selling your house. And when you're sending the town to buy groceries at the store, you don't want to see him selling the wagon and the team. Abridge that contract that he made because he didn't have the power to make.
Well, I don't know, fellas. We're getting off point here. We don't have slaves in this country. Why, we've abolished slavery.
Have you tried going between Idaho and Washington lately?
No, I haven't, Bob. How does that work?
I tried it about 2 weeks ago, and I'm telling you, if your paperwork isn't in order in this country, you can't pass between states.
Paperwork?
Yeah, papers. Don't you remember World War II and the Gestapo, and they're always stopping people and saying, let me see your papers, and the guy whips out his papers, and
You mean passports, driver's licenses, and registration, bills of lading, and
permits. And
you mean you have to have that in the U.S. of A.?
that's right. If you don't have that stuff, and if it's not in order, they stop you right away and they take you right to jail and
But
don't pass
this is
go.
a free country. What have you done wrong that you should go to jail?
I'm telling you, my papers aren't in order. If your papers aren't in order, you can't pass among the several states. Now, that comes into Article 4, Section 1, as I recall. Isn't that where that's at?
Well, did you go to court?
Well, not yet. I went to jail first. Yeah, they didn't understand the court. I asked about court. But
You mean you don't have papers? You don't have a driver's license, registration, proof of insurance, passport, documents, bills of ladings, inland bills of exchange, and other necessary and orderly papers so that an orderly society can function? How can we function in an orderly society without these necessary documents issued by our
Who's going
government?
to apply rules of conduct for you on the road and make sure that you don't go out and injure people and run over people? Who's going to tell you how to operate out there?
Well, I guess if I do something wrong, then possibly the people should do something about it. But I don't think my government should be doing anything about it. Once I've had a cause of action or done something to cause a cause of action to happen, if I hit somebody, I'm sure that they would try to take action against me. I think they have a cause of action in the court of law if I do that. But because I'm driving my property between two states, I see no need for my government to get excited because I'm on my roads with my car.
But don't you agree that there's a potentiality that you might cause an accident, and therefore we've got to apply rules of conduct for you, the rules of the road?
Well, I guess there's a potentiality of a danger from breathing that I may get something poisonous in there and may die.
Well, we ought to stop you from breathing then, shouldn't we?
Yeah, either license it or tax it, I guess.
Protect yourself.
Certainly, you must protect me. If you're going to do all that, you better protect me all the way. Maybe you should taste my food before I do to make sure it's not poison to protect me and charge me for tasting it.
Well, motor vehicles are real dangerous vehicles, and therefore I think we ought to regulate their use and make sure you don't drive them in a wild manner.
Are you telling me that an automobile is a dangerous weapon?
Yeah.
Are you telling me that a gun is a dangerous weapon?
Yeah, they're somewhat the same.
I see. In other words, sitting there all by itself, that automobile and that gun is dangerous.
Well, you would think so from the way it's being regulated.
In other words, it doesn't matter if it's moving or not moving, or it doesn't matter if you've got gas in it or not. It doesn't matter if somebody's behind the wheel. If somebody's behind the wheel and moving down the road, then there could be something happen to cause a damage, but it's not from the automobile.
Oh, that's it. When it's moving down, well, I think we should make all cars remain in the driveways. That way there won't be any danger at all.
Well, that's a good idea. You know, if we're going to regulate things like this, well, then we might as well take all the gas out of automobiles, and we could really
That'd solve the energy crisis, Bob.
Hey, it sure would.
Not only that, but you're not going to have any automobile deaths out there on the road. But
Gosh, we'd save 50,000 lives a year.
yeah, all of the public safety.
I think what we need
Why
is,
regulate drunk drivers when we just stop driving altogether?
I think that's a magnificent idea.
Well, they
And look at the insurance claims we could save.
Yeah, they can drive in their own driveway.
So with these people still getting insurance every year, that would really enrich the insurance companies, wouldn't it?
And it would protect the claims window of the insurance company, save 50,000 lives a year.
At
And
least.
I think that's a heck of an idea. I think we should legislate. I think we
Let's
need to
just
go.
make sure that the slaves have to be regulated this way.
You know that there's more deaths for 1 year in the United States because of automobiles than there were in 10 years that we were in Vietnam.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's a fact.
Well, that sounds like a serious health problem.
Well, I think this public safety is detrimental at this point. I mean, it's just absolutely unsafe to walk out there in the roads because some guy in a car will hit you. Is that why you see that?
That's the way I see
Well, we
it.
ought to make the automobile then a noxious substance and outlaw it completely.
Well, certainly. It's probably worse than heroin. I'll bet you more people are killed with automobiles than heroin.
Trying to make possession of an automobile a felony. That'd really put the stops to that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it'd be just like the heroin routine.
Well, certainly. Yes, I can see that there is a real public need and a real public interest, and the police powers certainly need to come into play on these automobiles. And we need to regulate people because it's obvious that these people are unable to make free choices for themselves and to conduct themselves pursuant to the Ten Commandments or to any other standard of morality.
I think
So
that
therefore,
the manufacture and sale of automobiles should be prohibited all around.
just like we did with alcohol in 1920,
The prohibition worked fine.
and that would solve the problem, wouldn't it?
Yes, I sure would.
And we'd save 50,000 lives a year, save billions of dollars in insurance claims, and we'd do that all in the name of health, safety, and welfare of the people into the police powers. I think that makes a lot of sense.
But you can carry this into any area you want to, not just into the area of driving property. Let's talk about our land. We were talking about that a little bit earlier, about this property tax scam. I mean, who owns the land?
Well, gosh, that's an interesting question. Now, in the Soviet Union, the government owns all the land, don't they?
And
And over
the
here in the United States, we own all the land. Why, I'm a homeowner. Well, I have a home and a mortgage and a dog and 3 kids and a patch of green out in the front of my house.
Let me ask you a question. If you don't pay that property tax to your county, what happens to your property?
Well, let me see. Now, if I didn't pay the property tax, I think that they would issue a tax deed and sell it on the courthouse steps.
I see. In other words, then, some other person besides yourself has a capability or the power to take your property away from you if you're not performing, and you give it to somebody that will perform properly. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, I guess that's the way that works.
Well, I thought you said you owned it.
Well, I guess I have an equitable interest in
Oh, I
that
see.
property, don't I?
Do you know of any land that you can own without having to perform specifically?
Someone told me that there were 14 pieces of allodial freehold property in the United States, and somebody told me they weren't paying property tax on it. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, up in New York State, there's some pieces that no property tax is paid on. Of course, the U.S. government owns lots of land it doesn't pay any taxes on.
Well, wait a minute. What types of land do we have? There are only 2 types, as I recall. One's allodial and one's feudal. If it's feudal, then you pay a service for staying on it. If it's allodial, then you own it.
That must mean the United States has the sole allodium in the United States, except for...
Wait a minute. I thought we got away from this back in the days when they left England, because that was part of the problems going on in England with King George. He claimed all the land and had ownership of all the land, and he was sovereign, and he made everybody pay a fee for living on there, and they wanted to own their own land, so they came over here so they could do that. Isn't the way that works?
Well, the law is on the books, and the taxation is part of the law, and you got to pay to support government, don't you?
In other words, you're telling me that we reverted right back to the fief, and the fiefdom in England this time.
It looks like we're feudal serfs on the government's land. Because if I don't perform and pay the tax, they'll kick me off of it and give it to some other Toby, some other slave. Is that the way that works?
Yeah, that's the way it works.
Well, then this property tax is an unconstitutional tax. Would that be a logical conclusion?
Well, as it's applied to some persons, it would be.
Well, how can I get out of paying the property tax? I've just decided I don't think that's a good idea for me. I want the slaves to pay it, but I don't want to pay it.
Well, do you own your property free and clear?
Well, no, I've got a mortgage on it, and I pay the mortgage faithfully every month, and I'm not behind on my payments.
I don't think you can get out of it.
Well, then somebody else owns your property.
Yeah,
Well, no, I'm the owner of my property. What do you mean somebody else owns it?
If you're the owner, stop paying the mortgage and the taxes.
Well, wait a minute. Then the bank will take it away from me.
Yeah, that's right. Now, the bank is a corporation.
I think there's a maximum law that comes in here that it says that if a man's property can be taken away from him on condition, it couldn't be said that he was the owner of it.
Well, then, do you mean that people in the United States are not the owners of their property if it's mortgaged?
That's right. Some corporation is.
Well, now let me see if I understand that. The corporation is created by the state.
Yes,
The corporation then is a serf, or a slave, a subject of the government. And when I signed my mortgage agreement, then I guess I agreed to make all of the payments and the taxes and the insurance and specifically perform. And when I did that, I then waived my rights under the Constitution and the common law, and now I'm simply in administrative jurisdiction. Is that kind of the way that looks?
Yeah, almost admiralty.
But how does that apply then to the property tax? You didn't sign any contract with your county.
No, but you did with the mortgage company. The mortgage company has just passed that bill on to the guy that's living in there.
Are you saying that the property tax is an excise tax on the privilege of having a mortgage or doing that kind of a contract with a corporation?
Yeah, I think so, because it's based on value.
Then that tax is only upon a corporate property?
Sure.
Well, then if a man owned his property free and clear, he shouldn't pay any property tax on his property. He would claim to own it in allodial freehold. Is that what you're saying?
It would appear to me that if you apply a property tax to a natural person who has paid off his land and who owns it free and clear, that would be a direct tax.
Well, the rule of law in America is that all property is essentially allodial. And so we have to determine who owns the allodium of any specific piece. It's either the man that is there in possession of it, or it's somebody that is a superior to him. So it's either going to be a corporation or it's going to be the man who owns the land outright and doesn't have to perform. That's the owner.
Yeah, that's right. He's the right of possessor.
Well, I'd say that there's no real owners in the society today except for corporations or banks or counties or somebody.
I can't think of a half a dozen people that I know that own their own piece of land. It isn't through a mortgage company.
Well, then it appears to me then that in the Soviet Union they're not hypocritical about it. They just say the state owns the land. And over here in the United States, what we do is we tell all the slaves that they are property owners, when in reality they're a little more than feudal serfs on the land.
Yeah, that's right.
And they'll be thrown off the land if at any time they fail to specifically perform.
How did this come about?
Well, now there's a question for you. What happened to us that this could come about?
I think we ought to take that up in our property class and maybe some others.
Yeah, I think we can explain where all that happened.
Can I take a moment here and I can show you that what we're talking about when we were mentioning taxes, guns, licenses, allodial freehold, these are words and terms that most Americans have never heard. If you're a factory worker in Texas and you're working on the docks or you're whatever it is you're doing in life, have you ever stopped to consider that a property tax is unconstitutional? Have you ever thought for a moment that gun control is already an accomplished fact in the United States? If you don't think that gun control is an accomplished fact, why don't you step out onto the street and count how many people you see walking down the street with a gun? And then come back in and tell me that we don't have gun control.
But we don't have gun confiscation and gun control here in America, and why we've never had legislation passed that did that, except like Morton Grove and places.
We've got the police on the streets, and they'll protect you, Mr. Cook. You don't need to carry a gun. If you carry one, we're going to harass you and intimidate you.
Yeah, but I've got the right to carry a gun.
Right?
Well, didn't you carry a gun, Bob?
Oh, yeah. I exercise my rights.
What happened when you exercised your right to carry a gun?
Well, I summarily picked right up by about 5 policemen and hauled right off to jail.
What happened to your gun?
They took it.
Well, are you a felon?
No.
Convicted of any crime?
No. Absolutely not.
Were you carrying the gun concealed?
Yeah.
Well, no wonder they took it away from you. You were carrying it concealed.
Wait a minute. What difference does that make? Can I carry it or not?
Well, it says right here in the Constitution that you can't carry a concealed weapon. It's in the Second Amendment. I can show you right here. Listen to this.
Let me hear this. I want to hear these lines.
Well, certainly. If I can find it. Sometimes I have a problem finding it, Bob.
I keep mine marked.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, except when they're carried concealed.
Give me that.
Oh, here it is. You had the wrong book. It's not in there. Idaho Constitution says...
So wait a minute. One book at a time, guys. Shall not be infringed. There's a period after there, and the word's quit there.
Well, it means if you carry it concealed. You see, they didn't say that exactly in those words, but they meant that.
Shall not be infringed. Infringed. That means if you put any condition on it, then you're infringing upon my right to carry a gun.
Do you mean there's definitions and meanings to words?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, we don't know what most of them are. You want to tell us how many words there are in the English language?
Gosh, somebody told me he was a functional illiterate the other day. He said there was 512,000 words in the English language, and that he'd read in Lou Boyd, and we know that's got to be correct because that was in the Statesman.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's the local rag around here.
Pravda West.
Yeah, Pravda.
Pravda West. Anyway, Lou Boyd said that a high school graduate knows 6,000 to 10,000 words.
Oh, that sounds like an awful lot.
Yeah.
And if you're a college graduate and if you've studied language, you could know as many as 20,000 words.
That's an awful lot.
Yeah, that's awful.
And the average person in everyday conversation uses about 3,500 words.
Uh-huh.
And that indicated to me that 20,000 out of 500,000 was somewhere around 2 to 3%. Now, I would contend that anybody who knows 2 to 3% of a subject would be what?
Functional illiterate.
A functional illiterate. Yeah, I'd say I'm a functional illiterate knowing about 2 to 3% of the words in the English language. But gosh, no wonder I don't understand my Constitution, Bob.
You're trying to put words there that aren't there.
Well, now, here it gets a lot more specific. It says the right to keep and bear arms shall not be abridged in Idaho. But it says this shall not prevent the passage of laws that govern the carrying of weapons concealed on the person.
Oh, that's interesting. What else does it say?
That seems to contradict the federal Constitution.
Well, wait a minute. If it contradicts my federal Constitution, it has no force and effect of law in the state Constitution. Just the way it is, guys.
Well, we've got a concealed weapon law in Idaho. It's been there since 1905, and I was wondering how that could exist when the Second Amendment is so plain.
Well, we've got the plantation up here. The plantation parliament just passes all kinds of laws.
You mean that law only applies to the slaves?
That's right.
Oh, I see. In other words, statutes and regulations then have to apply to regulated persons who are either licensed, convicted felons, or have made some kind of contractual agreement with their state.
That's right.
And natural and alienable rights cannot be infringed. And oh, is that what that means in the Miranda case when it says where rights are involved, there can be no rulemaking or legislation that would abrogate them?
That's right, but it takes a free and natural citizen to stand up for them. Just any old slave can't do it.
Well, I'm a free and natural citizen. Why? Well, I've got a license to drive, and I've got a...
Well, that's incredible. How could there be a law on the books like that that just so openly and glaringly violates the Constitution?
Well, as long as everybody sits there and rides the back of the bus and doesn't challenge it, it's a good law.
Oh, surely somebody in 75 years must have challenged that.
No, they dismissed it against me because I was going to challenge it. And I took it to court, and they decided the issue was too hot, and they dropped it.
You mean they don't think they'll win?
They know they would lose.
Well, when the government prosecutes you, Bob, and they know they have an unconstitutional statute, and you go in and you argue your position in court, why didn't you plead guilty? Why did you make such a fuss? Why, it must have cost the taxpayers a fortune with all this litigation and court costs and things like that.
Because I returned home and found out that my slaves rebelled against me, and I had to put them in line.
Slaves?
Yeah, my subjects.
Are you talking about government servants are not masters, they're servants?
Yeah, that's right.
But that legislature passed the law.
Well, they pass a lot of other things that goes in bad places, too, and it doesn't surprise me that they would pass laws that are also bad.
You mean that we have some unconstitutional laws here on the plantation in Idaho?
I would say probably 80 to 90%.
Well, how does one man challenge the authority of the whole legislature and the whole government?
Now we're getting somewhere. The only way that a citizen can exercise his rights is to commit the act and then go into the court for redress of grievance.
You mean you're breaking the law, Bob?
Well, I don't know if you want to call it breaking the law. Let's call it breaking the statute.
Well, why don't you go to your legislature and lobby and get the law changed?
Why don't you write a letter to the statesman, and why don't you carry a placard or something in front of the State House?
I did all that, and they just pass more laws every year.
Did you write a letter to your senator?
You bet.
Did you write letters to your representatives?
I did that, too.
Did you get redress of grievance?
No.
I got a constitutional amendment.
Yeah, that's an exception. And that one doesn't work very well either, because if you'll read that one, it
Let me
says...
tell you about that.
Yeah, it says, nor shall any law permit the confiscation of firearms except those in the commission of a felony. Now, I plainly asked that judge when they arrested me if I'd committed a misdemeanor or felony, and he told me, you've been charged with a misdemeanor. And still they confiscated my gun and kept it for 5 months.
Do you mean the police break the law?
Yeah, they lie a lot, too.
Well, my goodness, how can this be?
Well, we all know that it's true, and I think it's time to tell the people out there what we've cut this film for, so that we can introduce them to what we're doing and how we're going into the courtrooms and how we're winning, and that's what we want you to do out there, too. We want you to learn what we know up here in our brains and what we've put down on videotapes. We want you to look at the paperwork that we've amassed, and we've got books galore and Supreme Court cases, and we want you to read them, and we want you to become knowledgeable, and we want you to go into your courts in your state and your county and do there what we're doing here. And maybe we can have an adverse effect on our government and put it back and bind it down by the change of the Constitution.
You mean that redress of grievance comes in the court?
It certainly doesn't come in the legislature.
I think we found that out.
And it doesn't come with the executive branch of government.
Let me ask you fellas a question. Now that we've acted this out and we've had a little fun here today, do any of you fellas pay income tax?
No.
Why should I pay income tax?
Well, do you carry weapons concealed?
Yeah.
Do you have any license to drive your car?
No.
Do you have license plates on your car?
No, I don't.
You know, I don't have any license plate on my car either, and I don't have a driver's license. And would you say that we're just kind of acting like free men?
Yes, that's right.
No, we're just breaking the laws.
breaking the law.
It depends on your point of view, doesn't it? From the government's point of view, we're breaking the law. From our point of view, we're living like free men.
The funny thing is, we haven't had a court tell us yet that we had to have the license, that we had to get the registration.
I noticed the last time I was in court, I had a hard time getting any judge to order me to go get a license.
We haven't had a court tell us yet we couldn't carry a gun concealed.
That's right.
We haven't had a court tell us yet we had to pay the income tax.
They just don't want to punish you if you don't perform. And that's contractual.
If they can't order you to do something, why is it they punish you for not doing it?
So where do they get that kind of authority? Why don't you wrap this up, George? I think we're going to have to wrap this up.
What you've seen here today, then, friends, is three men here who have decided to live like free men and to live in the way that our founding fathers designed for us with this little book called the Constitution of the United States. What's happened here in the United States as we see it is that we've gotten the chain of command out of sequence. We think that the chain of command starts with God, and then it devolves upon man, and then it devolves upon our Constitution, devolves upon our government officers, and the government officers then hire the bureaucrats. And today what we have is an absolute inversion of the law of the land, our Constitution. Now we have the bureaucrat up here on top, and then we have the government officials that we elect seem to be under the thumb of the bureaucrat.
You mean that the bureaucrats can come in and ask the legislature to pass laws?
Yes, that's right, Neelis. They come into the legislature and they lobby for the laws that they want to regulate and control.
Is that why that new infraction law was passed, lobbied in by the Prosecuting Attorneys Association?
I think it just makes it a more convenient and more profitable system for them to collect revenue through infractions rather than through due process of law.
Not only that, it makes the slaves less excited.
We have a course of study here in 30 lessons on videotape. What you're looking at here is the introduction to it. And the three of us who are the instructors here at the school have put this together for you so that you can learn how to go into the courtroom and argue a case and win it. You've looked at people here who have been in the courtroom probably 50 times and have won 50 cases. I mean, when we go into the courtroom, we go in and win. We're not plea bargaining. We're not paying fines. We're not going to jail. It isn't to say that I haven't been in jail a few times, just like the lady in Birmingham, Alabama that said, this black is not riding the back of the bus. She challenged the law and she did so successfully. And we here in Idaho are challenging the laws, and we're challenging these laws, and we're doing it successfully. And if you want to stop paying that income tax, you're going to have to learn what the income tax is and how it applies to you and how to avoid the tax and stop evading the tax. And there's a way to do it. There are Supreme Court cases and decisions, and I'd like to just take a moment here and read this case called Hale versus Hinkle, and I want to show you what the Supreme Court has already said about individuals pursuant to an income tax, as an example, or whether or not you need to file, or whether or not you have an unlimited right to contract. The Supreme Court said here, and we are of the opinion that there's a clear distinction in this particular between an individual and a corporation. And I think we've illustrated that in this sample tape today, that there's a clear distinction between the slaves on the plantation and the free men, or the free people, the free persons, that have inalienable rights under the Constitution, and that the latter, that is, the Constitution, has no right to refuse to submit its books and papers for an examination at the suit of the state. And so what we're looking at here is corporations that have no rights, and then our bureaucrats assessing and attempting to class all individuals in the capacity of corporations, and they treat us all as if we were corporate entities without any rights.
Equal oppression under the law?
I think that's a good term, Neil. It's equal oppression under the law.
We don't want to miss anybody.
The individual, though, may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. And that's what you need to learn, is how to apply your constitutional rights, what they are and how to use them, and how to use them in the courtroom. Redress of grievance to a free man is in about 9 square feet, right in the center of the courtroom floor where you put your feet. But you know, the average person couldn't go into the courtroom and argue a parking ticket. And when he gets into the courtroom, or even before he gets to the courtroom, all the prosecutor has to do is say, we'll take you to court. And every citizen in the land melts like a jellyfish in the hot sun. And until our citizens and until you can learn that your redress of grievance comes on the courtroom floor, what happens when they tell you, Neelis, that they're going to take you to court?
I just tell them to spell my name out.
Bob, do you melt when you go to court?
George, I have fun when I go to court, George.
That's the way I see it. If you're not handling those IRS tax audits and having fun while you're doing it, it's because you're not handling them correctly. And if you're not having fun in the traffic court, it's because you don't know and understand how to apply your rights. That's the way I saw that. In any event, he is entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. And you know, you're looking at 3 people on this videotape that carry on their own private business in their own way. His power to contract is unlimited. You're looking at 3 people here who have an unlimited power to contract. And when I want to write a contract, I don't need to have it approved by any government official. My bureaucrats, when they put their feet up on the table, I kick them off and tell them to sit down. He owes no duty to the state or to his neighbors to divulge his business or to open his doors to an investigation so far as it may tend to incriminate him. I don't open my doors, and I keep all of my business records right here. That's all I need. He owes no such duty to the state since he receives nothing therefrom. And since I'm not on welfare, not on the dole, I don't have a social security number, I don't have a social security card, and I don't need my government's permission to work. Besides that, I found that work is unprofitable, and I think playing is a whole lot more interesting and it's a whole lot more fun. Beyond the protection of his life and property, his rights are such as existed by the law of the land long antecedent to the organization of the state. My rights came somewhere long before we ever got on the state, or we ever created the state. And we're sending this tape out to you with the express purpose of giving us an opportunity to reach you, and we'd like to talk to you personally and direct. Are we done?
I think we're done.